We like to believe we have a handle on things, that we understand the world well enough to move through it confidently, that we know who we are, what's real, and what's worth pursuing. But how much of that confidence is earned, and how much is just the illusion of certainty? Every day we make hundreds of decisions, some minor, some massive, and behind almost all of them is an assumption that we know. We know what we're doing. We know what's best. We know enough. But do we? In philosophy, there's a long-standing idea that certainty is a rare, maybe even impossible state. René Descartes famously questioned the very foundation of his beliefs, eventually arriving at the one thing he couldn't doubt, that he was doubting. I think, therefore I am. But most of us don't live like Descartes. We live more like gamblers, placing bets on our assumptions without realizing they're bets at all. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It's deeply human. Psychologists have found that people often feel most certain right before they're wrong. We remember the times we were right and conveniently forget the times we were absolutely sure and still wrong. There's a name for this: epistemic overconfidence. It's the gap between what you know and what you think you know, and it's everywhere. In politics, in relationships, in careers. It's why arguments rarely lead to resolution. It's why people double down even when evidence contradicts them. It's why we sometimes pursue a goal for years before realizing it was never the right one. Here's the twist. Certainty feels good. It's comfortable. It gives us a sense of control. It protects us from the terrifying vastness of not knowing. And so our minds are wired to prefer certainty over accuracy. At the cost of that preference, we become blind to nuance, deaf to dissent, resistant to learning. Because when you're certain, truly certain, you stop listening. Ironically, the people who are most aware of what they don't know tend to sound the least confident. They hedge their claims. They say things like, I think, or it's possible, or I'm not sure. And because of that humility, they're often ignored. Meanwhile, the loudest voices, the ones most sure of themselves, often dominate the conversation, even if they're wrong. Not because they're right, but because confidence is contagious. So what do? Should we stop trusting ourselves? Should we walk around paralyzed by doubt? But we should develop a better relationship with uncertainty. We should learn to say, I don't know, not as a weakness, but as a sign of strength. Because once you admit you don't know, you open the door to actually learning. You give yourself permission to be wrong. And that's the only way to ever be truly right. We live in a time where everyone seems to have an opinion, but far fewer have reflection, and fewer still have doubt. The next time you feel certain about something, pause. Ask yourself, what would it take to change my mind? If the answer is nothing, you might not be confident. You might just be closed. The illusion of certainty is one of the mind's most persuasive tricks, but it's only by recognizing that trick that we can begin to see things as they are, not just as we wish them to be. Because the goal isn't to know everything. The goal is to stay open to everything we don't. Be careful with your confidence. Be curious with your doubts. And most of all, stay thoughtful.